Okay, so I had kind of a subject I wanted to cover while I was thinking about it. So I'm going to be watering my horses during this. I'm moving from stall to stall. Hey, bud. The thing that happened in the Olympics with the trainer, no, don't touch it. With the trainer that punched the horse during that one event. Now, in honesty, there's a couple of thoughts on that. First off, I think there's more aggression in the physical body of the trainer than there was in the power of that punch. I do feel that that punch was not packing as much impact as it was being portrayed. And I'm not saying there's anything okay about even that display. However, there's not enough strength in that punch to create physical harm to the horse. I don't agree with it. Okay, understand that. I don't agree with it. But here's where I'm also coming with that. Have you ever seen a child walking a horse around a farm, especially once there's a bunch of other little kids there too, you know, their peers, and even the adults that maybe the child would like to impress, and you ever see them just yanking like they have a shank on a horse, just yanking on a pony merely for the sake of doing it, not because you can even see anything that warranted that correction, you know, because that's a corrective maneuver, if it's even something that should be considered a corrective maneuver. But to see a child do that is actually, and you can clearly determine that there was nothing that made that necessary, which there never is, but to have a child do that is 1,000,000%, in my opinion, because of what they witness, to be okay amongst the adults. What do we call that? Get after him? Is that what people call that? We're gonna get after him. Get after him, you know? So this is what kids are being raised around. This is what people are being raised around. So how do we kind of not expect that the generations moving forward are going to see some level of abuse as being just what you do with horses? I'm super glad that publicly that's something that's been brought to attention now, because now it's time for reform. Now it's time to change what is acceptable in the treatment of horses. How many times, I can say for myself, I couldn't even count how many times I was in an arena and I watched a horse get beat for refusing a jump. I watched a horse, you know, or you're watching, you know, you're present to a lesson and you constantly hear the trainers yelling, kick 'em, hit 'em, kick 'em, hit 'em. In fact, I trained at a barn, you know, just horses that I was working with at a barn that was an active, otherwise lesson show barn. And there were two trainers that were part of their own aisle. And, you know, like some big barns rent out like 10 stalls, and that's called like their own show aisle. And those 10 stalls actually have its own entity. These two girls would scream, hit 'em, kick 'em, hit 'em, kick 'em at every single person that rode their ponies, to the point to where I called them the hit 'em, kick 'em girls. That's how extreme it was. And the sad thing is we've also all been witness to this. When the little kid is not hitting them or kicking them hard enough, not hitting them and kicking them effectively enough, guess what happens next? The kid gets off, the trainer gets on, and now the hitting and kicking really begins. This is what we are teaching our children is okay. This is what is grooming our future of horse abusers. Why don't we start educating? Why don't we start telling people, proving to people that there is punishment to be had for the way you treat these animals, and that our children will learn that there's consequences to abusing a horse, not acceptability, not commonality, not just the way it is. Some barns actually have it in their barn policy that no horse is allowed to be moved about the property without a metal chain shank over the horse's nose. Snapped to one side of the halter, wrapped around the nose, and then through the other side of the halter, for those that don't know what a shank is. It's also called a stud chain, whatever you want to call it. Does not matter. It's a piece of metal chain that goes across the bridge of the horse's nose, which is all cartilage. Okay? You are telling people that the best way to control your horse is to have this chunky piece of metal go across your horse's nose. Now, children are witness to that. Like I said, there's some barns that's actually their policy. That is how horses are supposed to be transported from one spot to another. If I was to implement any specific type of headgear that I would want all my horse owners to use while they move their horses about within the property, I would want them to know how to properly tie, and then yes, insist that they use a rope halter. The reason for that is that a rope halter is the difference between leaning on a flat hand or leaning on my fingertips, which is going to be more uncomfortable to lean on. And 90% of the issues that we have with horses, hey Bentley, say hi Bentley. 90% of the issue we have with horses is that they know they can get their nose away from you. They know that they can tip their nose in the opposite direction of where you are, and then they've got you. Anytime a horse can get their nose from you, you're done. Okay? So the idea really is, let's control their nose. I get that, okay? But I also get that in a more humane way. A rope halter just says, I don't suggest you lean on this. A rope halter doesn't cut their nose, doesn't inflict so much pain that, hi bud, that, the horse is fearful of even getting his halter put on. I have a perfect example. I have a horse who was uncatchable. And he was only uncatchable because somebody had a halter in their hand. If he already had a halter on, he was perfectly fine to be caught. His name is Logan. Logan was a stallion until he was 5.5 years old. When the owner had called me and said, I can't catch him unless he already has a halter on. Well, then that's not a catching problem, that's a halter problem. So what do we have to figure out about the halter? Well, let's see. Did the halter ever hurt him? Is there something about the halter that hurt him? Well, the first thing I come up with is, a chain. People probably used a chain with this horse. So, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? So, I spent a lot of time actually teaching him that I'm not going to, incorporate a chain with this haltering. You're not going to have me yank on you for any reason. Well, then, after I purchased him, I couldn't let him go home. He was mine, Look at that filth on the ceiling there. We couldn't get it off. We power washed it. But anyway, now that I've brought your attention to it. Hi, Tyson. That caught my attention so much I forgot what I was saying. Oh, so when I had all his actual paperwork in my hand and I was actually going through it, like maybe looking to, confirm things for myself, or just, being nosy about the paperwork, or, being nosy, just looking through his paperwork, I, what do you call it? Hold on, my favorite thing is watching their ears pulse. And I like watching the water go down their throat too, but I love watching their ears pulse. That's why I wait until the morning to fill their water buckets. I say I wait till the morning. I wait until they're in their stalls and they've already had their breakfast, so that way they don't put grain in their water buckets and contaminate their water and then refuse to drink their water later, because they'll do that if they contaminate their water. Sometimes grain creates like a foul smell in the water if it sits in the water. So then they won't drink their water for the rest of the day. We don't want that. So I always make sure that they've already eaten their grain and part of why I love waiting until they're in, is because I love watching them drink. I've had this discussion with somebody recently. Anyway, so as I was going through his paperwork, I came across his Coggins, actually 2 sets of Coggins. And in both sets of Coggins, in the pictures, he had a chain over his nose. There's my answer. Now, to this day, it does not matter. There's nothing about being haltered that scares him. There's nothing about being caught that is a concern for him. Hi, bud. He is completely over the whole thing. So it was definitely a chain-related thing. So I know I went off on a little tangent about, chains and what they do to our horses, even if it's just psychologically. Hold on, let me move away from him. He won't drink with me in that bucket. Go ahead, drink some more. He might not drink anymore. Look at his ears. I love that. Anyway, so the point of this really is let's do some reform now. Let's let this very public, even to people who don't know horses, very public response to somebody reaching out and punching a horse with, like I said, I don't condone it in any way. I have absolutely no respect for anybody that would even have that much pent-up aggravation to throw a punch. But truthfully, her punch was, like when you see two people fighting and you're not really in the fight, but you want to, you're kind of, I really think that that's what it was in terms of the actual physicality of it. I don't agree with the intention behind it, of course, and intention is really what matters. And yes, you publicly showed abusive intentions. Okay. Let's change things now. Let's stop letting children believe that this is just how you handle horses. Let's stop barns from accepting, because who knows, that might be somebody who grew up that way too. The person who owns the barn may say, you know what, that's just, that's how you do horses. It's all I've ever known. I run into that all the time. Oh, well, that's how I was raised, or that's all I've ever known. Well, okay. Does it seem okay now that you're an adult? Does it seem like it's the right way now that you're an adult? Have you ever tried a better way? And, self-promotion here, there's a better way. And if you want to learn better ways, give me a call. But yeah, I think that would be the opportunity. Let's not miss the opportunity now to reform the way children are being raised around horses, and to maybe help some barns that have been misguided too. Hey, let's change this. Let's really strive for better communication with horses. Let's not abuse a horse who's trying to tell us something. Let's not abuse a horse for being afraid. Have you ever been out on a trail with somebody who's honestly, their aggravation, just like that trainer's aggravation, was the public humiliation more than it was about the horse, to be honest with you? It was more about herself. It was more about her internally having pent up embarrassment that this was happening to her, really. And it really had nothing to even do with the rider. But have you ever been on a trail ride with somebody and with multiple people there, and this one person's horse won't cross the water or go around a log, right? That person who starts to panic because they realize they're inconveniencing, or believe that they're inconveniencing, realize is not the right word, believe that they're inconveniencing the group because their horse is a problem. Okay, their horse is a problem. So they should do something about it, right? They better hurry up and fix this problem because everybody's growing impatient. Everybody's advising. Get after him, don't let him get away with that, get after him, right? Who hasn't heard that? Now you have somebody at a water crossing or making an effort to get around something that's scaring the horse, and you're being told, abuse him. This is the right answer. Abuse him while you're scared, while he's scared. Yeah, that's okay. Let's abuse the horse who's afraid, instead of saying, hey, let's work through this. What part of this is scaring you? Your depth perception, you're not sure how deep that water is? Okay, let's take this slow. If you're out with the right group of people, they're totally going to be intrigued and appreciative of how you handle it. They're going to appreciate the lesson that is in the way you handle it. Hey, maybe next time they're on a horse like that, they're going to see positive results. They're going to see that the next time they go out with you and your horse who had a hard time at that water crossing, now just breeze right through it like, oh yeah, that's right, you explained that to me last time, right? And they're going to see positive, permanent results. First of all, make sure you have the right group of people. And that's a whole other, but tell me we haven't seen that. You have not seen somebody out on a trail just beating the shit out of a horse because it's practically running backwards away from something that you keep pushing it towards, that you keep insisting that it get over it, you know? And your peers, and that's just it. It's like, it's a personal issue. Your peers have created the intention to abuse your horse because you don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. You don't want to look like you don't have control of your horse. You don't want to look like you don't have a good relationship with your horse. Well, my personal opinion is if you're abusing your horse, you don't have a good relationship with your horse. But basically, I guess where I was going with any of that is, let's take this Olympics thing. Let's take the public abuse as it was seen. The intention was there. The abusive attention was there. Yes. Do I think the horse sustained any injury? No. But I do think that the intention was there, and I do think the evidence of peer pressure and how that can make how you feel you're being viewed, and the embarrassment of how you're being viewed can be taken out on an animal, and that needs to stop. I think that children witnessing that kind of thing as being acceptable ways to manage horses needs to stop. I do think that having a rope halter as part of your mandatory equipment as far as a barn owner, I think that's actually pretty wise. I don't think a stud chain is wise. I think that's giving people a gun that they may not know how to use. And a rope halter, a horse may lean on that all on his own and say, ooh, I better come back off of that. I better yield to that pressure because it's kind of uncomfortable. Where when they lean on a nylon flat halter, there's nothing uncomfortable about that. And they also know that they're strong. They weigh a lot more than you. Do you see this big horse right here? That big horse right here has gotta be 2,000 pounds. Okay, he's not your average, he's a Clydesdale, but still, that 2,000 pound horse wants to take you aisle skiing, which actually did happen when he was about 11 months old. I shouldn't even really tell you this story. Somebody I know wanted to help bring him in, and I had brought in Bentley ahead of him. Bentley was his turnout mate, and he wasn't used to Bentley leaving ahead of him and him being free to come as well, because normally he would wait in the paddock and then I'd come back for him. So this day somebody was helping me, and as I went into my barn, you go through kind of a narrow aisle, and then when you turn, you come out of the sight of that aisle, so all of a sudden you disappear. Well, Teddy seen myself and Bentley disappear and panicked. And when he panicked, he said, I gotta catch up to them, right? So, oh my God, they disappeared. I better go find them. I gotta catch up to them. So he started to trot. Well, even at 11 months old, this horse was pretty big. So when he started to trot, this individual, did the tug of war kind of grip and planted his feet, but he didn't stay still. So after about 8 feet of aisle skiing, where your feet are still, you're gripped onto this rope, and the animal you're holding onto is moving like a boat, you are skiing on pavement. I yelled, let him go, because I knew he was just going to come and catch up to me. So I was able to help this person not get knocked down, because that happens. We've all seen that too. Somebody desperately holding on, and then the horse, gives you a good enough yank that you fall down, and now you're being dragged on your stomach. I was able to say, let go, and yeah, he came up to me, and I caught him, and whatever. But that's because he had a flat halter on his nose. That was, he didn't have a rope halter yet. So that's a perfect example of what a horse can do if they want to, and more likely if they have a flat-nosed halter on. So I don't own any flat-nosed halters. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and show... Well, I shouldn't say I don't own any. That was wrong to say. I own flat-nosed halters. I just don't use them. Okay. So what I use... Let's see. I'll use Logan's. His is prettier. So I have this halter, which I love it. But see, the noseband is a rope noseband. The rest of the halter looks like your beautiful leather halter. It's twisted, so let me just make it prettier. But it has a rope noseband. And a rope throat latch. Well, I don't really know that has any impact. It's really keeping them from getting their nose from you. But, you can put your nameplates on them. This is the halter. If I was to say, look, you want to have a beautiful leather halter and you want your horse to carry his name on his halter all the time, even though you can do that with the nylon ones as well. I'll quickly show you one of my nylon ones. I have all of these halters. I'm not here to promote anybody. I do like the product. It's from Horse Education Company. It's a hybrid halter for anybody who, you're welcome for the advertisement, by the way. But so here's the nylon version, and again, it just has the rope nose. You can still cross tie them with the hooks. You still have everything else the same, okay? And it's got the rope throat latch. However, I really don't see the point of the rope halter. Here's the other thing I like about it. Wow, now I'm really advertising. You know what? I'm not. Is this moves from side to side, so you can be on the left side of your horse or on the right side of your horse with your halter. If I can make that more obvious, let me see. So that way, if your horse does try to get his nose from you, you have even more leverage by being more on the side of the horse that you might want to be on. Again, I'm not actually attempting to advertise for anybody, but if I have a product I like, I will always tell somebody about it. I have... Every horse in my barn has that halter. And then, of course, I have tons and tons of regular rope halters. In fact, I just ordered 4 more because they were on sale from a clearance sale that I've also told all my customers, go on that site. But if you go on that site, make sure that you check to make sure that the price doesn't change in checkout, because I caught that. Anyway, so that's it. Let's change the way people handle horses. Let's change these. You have to have a chain on your horse's nose as part of barn policy, and change to halters like that, which are fashionable enough. They are so much less abusive, and they take the gun out of inexperienced gun handlers' hands. It's too easy for somebody to hurt a horse because they don't know what they're doing with a chain across the horse's nose. That chain is for like a security, like a safety net. But how many times I've seen people yank in anger at a horse who had a chain over his nose. Because, what, he walked 2 steps ahead of you, and he needs to respect me. There's so much acceptable aggression in horses, and I would do anything to see this public display and public attention on the Olympic thing really be what transforms people's ideas of acceptable in horses.